What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Slaw Sports Show. I'm your host, as always, Cole Noble, aka Slaw. And today, for today's episode, we're going to have a solo episode. And this week, we're going to be dappering in a lot of stuff in the world of sports. Of course, we're going to start off everything and start off the episode as we always do in the UFC with Slaw's main card pick'em of the week. But looking forward to the episode we got on tap for today. We're going to be spending some time in the NBA a little bit after our fight night pick'em of the week for tomorrow night. Then go over to the MLB for a little bit, and then go over as well, as always, into the NFL. So you guys know the deal, everyone that is following along and watching live. We are live on YouTube at the Slaw Sports Show and also live on WSOE 89.3. So you can find us anywhere at the Slaw Sports Show, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get a podcast. Catch up on all the episodes of the show, and of course, always check us out live. The show has been going great, and everything is going swimmingly so far. So let's get into today's episode. That's what you're all here for, and that's what we're here to talk about. So UFC Fight Night, as always, Slaw's main card pick'em of the week. So we always pick the main card fight every Saturday night in the UFC, and we got another fight night here coming up tomorrow night. But taking a step back, let's look at our record. We are currently sitting at 5-4 in the Slaw's main card pick'ems of the week. Last week we improved. We were on a little bit of a downstretch. I think we lost 2 or 3 straight fights for our picks of the week, but we got back into the win column last week with Marvin Vettori getting that unanimous decision win against Kevin Holland. That's a pick we had here on the Slaw Sports Show, and that's the kind of things that we're trying to have here with this segment. So this week, we got a middleweight main card on deck in the UFC. I'm excited about this one. Robert the Reaper Whittaker is taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Right now, it's looking like a great fight. You look at it, this is a big fight for both contenders, guys that are looking to make a mark in this division. And right now, looking at Robert Whittaker, he's a guy who's wanting to be the number one contender in this weight class. And in my opinion, he is the number one contender in the middleweight class right now. But, all the media is on his side. Robert Whittaker is just a guy who traditionally hasn't been very vocal about his current stance in the division. But I think that this is a good fight for him to get back on track and to build up his case to take on Israel Adesanya here soon for a title fight in the division. But the same thing goes on the other side for Kelvin Gastelum, a guy who needs to get his name heard and a guy who needs to start getting some quality wins under his belt as well in order to, improve on his performance and improve on what he's trying to lock down here in this division. So, as always, what we always do is go in with the tail of the tapes for both sides, talk about both fighters, talk about what's at stake in the fight, and then also finally give our final pick. But before we do that, something we do have to mention is this fight between Robert Whittaker and Kevin Gastelum was originally supposed to happen back in February of 2019, but unfortunately it fell through. Whittaker had the title belt at the time, and it was going to be a great fight on paper, but Whittaker had an abdominal hernia and a collapsed bowel, and that required emergency surgery the day before the fight. So they ended up not going through with that one, and now they're running it back here this weekend. Now, obviously, Whittaker is not the title holder, no longer in the middleweight division. Now that belongs to Israel Adesanya. So instead, we just get a good bout here between two potential contenders in the middleweight division, and I just think it's set to be a great fight the way it's looking right now. So let's get to the tail of the tape, and let's start with the Reaper and start with Whittaker, a guy who in his career has a 23-5 record. Very good as of late. But like I said, for him, he should be the number one contender in the middleweight division, and he needs to prove it. Everyone's been on his side, and everyone's seen it happen. But now this is the chance to tomorrow night on Saturday for Whittaker to prove himself and prove that he is the number one contender to take on Israel Adesanya. And Adesanya right now has no interest in a second fight against Whittaker. They already had one fight before when Adesanya took the belt. But he has no interest in a second fight against him. They had another fight before but just nevertheless, Adesanya has no interest right now in competing and, having a chance to hold the title against Whittaker and against, a potential contender in the weight class. But when you look at, how he plays and how he fights, looking at Robert Whittaker, it's a guy who he likes to stand up. He likes to stand up and throw hands with his competitor and with all the big strikers in this division. He's been capable and shown that he's capable of doing so, and that's his style of game. Not a big wrestler, not a big grappler, just stand up, keeps his distance, and can hang with all the strikers in the class. But while it's more likely his style, something I'm expected to see out of the Reaper tomorrow night is him being more smart. Him just being more tactical with his play, being, smart, high IQ, making great decisions in the octagon because he knows what's at stake. He knows that it's a potential fight to lead up into a title fight if all goes well for him. So I expect him to be a lot more smart and a lot more tactical in this one tomorrow night. And again, let's just look at the numbers for Whittaker. He's won 11 of his last 12, which means he has one loss in the last 7 years. And that one loss was to Israel Adesanya. So he's taken care of everyone else he's faced against in the last 7 years. And you take out the Adesanya fight, the guy's been undefeated for 7 years. And his only loss to Adesanya was in October of 2019. So going on about a year and a half since he's been defeated. And this guy has 10 middleweight wins, which puts him up with 12 other fighters that have double-digit wins in the division. So he's up there with some of the best in the middleweight class and has a chance, like we keep saying here, to make it an unofficial contender to official contender for the title in the division. And now we flip to the other side of the tail of the tapes with Kelvin Gastelum, a guy who's 17-6 in his official career. Very rhythmic fighter. When he gets into the rhythm, he's dangerous. And we've seen it time and time again when he's in the octagon. A guy who traditionally also likes that stand-up role, just like Robert Whittaker does. But the other thing I might see from him tomorrow is going to be a little bit of wrestling. I think he's going to implement it a little bit more and just try to put that into his style in that fight tomorrow night, just because it's obviously not the style that the Reaper works with Robert Whittaker. That's against his style of play, so I think that Gastellum might try to throw him off his edge just a little bit, just enough to get the edge against him. So we could see some wrestling get thrown in a little bit, which is, again, outside of Whittaker's comfort zone. The other thing with Gastellum I want to mention is he's coming off back-to-back camps, so this guy's in shape, and this guy's prepared to go the distance if he needs to against Whittaker tomorrow night and go the full 5 rounds in this fight. So I think it might be a long one tomorrow night, but at the same time, I think it's also going to be a great one. And you look at the numbers for Gastellum, 6 knockdowns in UFC middleweight bouts. That puts him 5th amongst 185-pounders. But unfortunately, that number goes on aside with Whittaker, who has 7, putting him 4th in the division. So 7 knockdowns compared to the 6 knockdowns that Gastellum has in the UFC bouts. And then you look at what he's done the last couple of fights. This is where you give the edge to Whittaker, because Gastellum has won 2 of his last 5 fights in the octagon. The most recent win he had was actually earlier this year in February against Ian Heinisch, and a big win against him by unanimous decision, just further showing that he is capable and he's been ready to go these long fights that could go into the 5th round and ultimately up to the decision. So again, I keep saying this one could be a long one, but this one also is going to be a great one, in my opinion. So that's a tail of the tape for both sides, Robert the Reaper Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. So that's what we got tomorrow night's main card. Now let's get to Slaw's main card pick'em of the week. It's what you're all waiting for. So when I look at this fight and when I'm grading, what I'm expected to see and what I think the potential outcome is going to be in this fight, I'm really enticed with how confident Whittaker is going into this fight, how confident Robert Whittaker is, and he knows very well that he's going to go into the octagon tomorrow night and play his game. And he has something to prove, and he has a lot more to prove to everyone, to the division, to Israel Adesanya, to the media, to his team, just a lot more to prove and a lot more at stake for him than Kelvin Gastelum. So I think Whittaker's going to be a lot more confident, a lot more ready, and a lot more amped up to go into this fight and make something out of it. And I also feel like his high IQ is going to pay off. With him knowing what's at stake, he's going to play smart. And I think that's going to be a big part of Whittaker's game tomorrow night. So with the focus and the way he's played the last couple of fights, not taking that much damage when he's been in the octagon, I think he's going to keep that trend going. So you add in focus, you add in not taking that much damage. That's a perfect recipe, and especially with how both fighters play, not really that big on knockouts, not really that big on submissions. Perfect recipe for this fight to go to the decision tomorrow night. So I'm going to take Robert the Reaper Whittaker. Give me Whittaker by decision tomorrow night against Kelvin Gastelum. That's going to be Slaw's pick'em of the week for tomorrow night's UFC Fight Night main card. So 5-4 record. I hope to improve on that. Stay in the win column here. So all the chips and the cards are on the Reaper tomorrow night. So hope you guys enjoy tomorrow night's fight and just enjoy the UFC in general. It's an underrepresented sport in my opinion, so that's why I love getting into it to start off every single episode. So main card pick'em of the week, give me Whittaker by the decision. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into the rest of the episode starting in the NBA. But again, you're listening to the Slaw Sports Show. I'm your host, Cole Noble, a.k.a. Slaw, live on YouTube and live on WSOE as well. Take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Slaw Sports Show. I'm your host again, Cole Noble, aka Slaw, for those who have just joined, live on YouTube at the Slaw Sports Show and also live on WSOE 89.3 FM as well. So welcome back to the show. We just went over our main card pick'em of the week for UFC Fight Night tomorrow night. And now we're going to switch it up here and go to the NBA and talk about some basketball. A lot of headlines that came out this past week, a lot of injuries, and a lot of players getting cleared from injury as well. So first and foremost, James Wiseman, the number 2 overall pick from the Golden State Warriors, has tore his meniscus and he will be out for the remainder of the season. And, that pairs up now with LaMelo Ball as well, who was also a high first round pick, had a wrist fracture. He's out indefinitely as of right now and not sure how long he'll be out. It's, looking like the majority of the season, but they haven't ruled him out for the entire season. But with James Wiseman out now for the entire season, LaMelo out for what could be almost the entire season as well, I think this opens the door right now for Anthony Edwards to win Rookie of the Year. And in the NBA, the way Anthony Edwards has been playing so far with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he's, I've gotten back and forth reviews on Anthony Edwards and how he's done so far in his first season. But with what's going on with Wiseman being out, LaMelo being out, and just the rest of the field outside of these guys, when you look at the bets for Rookie of the Year right now, Anthony Edwards is going to be, in my opinion, the heavy favorite to potentially win this award. And right now, through 56 games, he's averaging 18.1 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 2.6 assists. Playing very quality basketball right now, already in his rookie year, doing a lot on the court for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But again, just heartbreaking to hear with James Wiseman, just a horrible way to end his rookie season, and LaMelo Ball as well. 2 huge injuries that are shaping up not even their young careers, but the league in general. And like I said, it's going to open the door, in my opinion, for Anthony Edwards to potentially win this award once we get to the end of the season. But from the bad side of injuries, now to the good side of injuries, Anthony Davis with the Los Angeles Lakers is about to get cleared, actually has been cleared for full court activity, soon to be cleared to be back on the court for the Lakers. He has been heavily missed, and as has LeBron James as well. But Anthony Davis, AD, has not been on the court since February 14th. So over 2 months since Anthony Davis has been on the court dealing with an Achilles and calf injuries. And the LA Lakers right now sitting at a 34-22 record. They've been in limbo the last couple of games, missing their 2 star players and looking to get one back. As of right now, Saturday and Monday's games, it's looking unlikely for Anthony Davis to return. But by next week, I do think we see the Brow back on the court for the LA Lakers, which for the Lakers is great to hear. Getting him back, pairing him back up soon, hopefully again with LeBron James, is going to be key for the reigning champs to go forward and continue on their quest to win a second title and 2 years. But Anthony Davis, when he was on the court this season, was playing great for the Lakers. 22.5 points per game, 8.4 rebounds. He had 3 assists per game and 1.8 blocks per game, and that's in 23 games that he has only played this season. So hope to get him back on the court this week. I'm ready to see the Brow back in action with the Lakers, and just hope that team gets right back on track and continues on. And another injury return that we saw this week was my man Giannis Antetokounmpo with the Milwaukee Bucks. Here on the Slaw Sports Show, big Milwaukee sports fan, and Giannis, the Greek Freak, the 2-time reigning MVP, reigning Defensive Player of the Year award winner, was back on the court on Thursday against the Atlanta Hawks. 6-game absence for Giannis, so not near as long as Anthony Davis. And the Bucks been trying to keep things on track without him. But the Greek Freak's back and played great in his first game. First game back, only played 24 minutes, but had 15 points and 5 rebounds in that game against the Hawks. A 120-109 win in that one. I'm excited to see him back in action, obviously, as a Milwaukee Bucks fan. But again, the other thing we mentioned with Anthony Davis, excited to also see him back on the court as well. And the big news and the big headline of the week from the NBA, I would say, has been Lamarcus Aldridge, who back on March 28th signed a deal with the Brooklyn Nets, continuing to build that super team it looks like they were building up there in New York. But Lamarcus Aldridge suddenly has retired from the NBA. He had an irregular heartbeat during the game, started dealing with some heart issues, and announced his retirement after 15 seasons. Tragic breaking news in the middle of the week, in the middle of a season for Lamarcus Aldridge. You hate to see it for him and what he's done in his career. Obviously the acclaimed part of his career and the bulk of his greatness was with the San Antonio Spurs and, of course, the Portland Trail Blazers as well. 7-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA second team. Lamarcus Aldridge is a big part of, this current era we've seen in the NBA, and just 15 seasons of excellent to quality play that we've seen from Lamarcus Aldridge. Just, again, back to the bad side of injuries in professional sports with Lamarcus Aldridge. So he is now retired. What are the Brooklyn Nets going to do? They have a spot open now to continue building that super team. So as the Brooklyn Nets, wouldn't be surprised and probably expecting them to eventually do something, adding another piece to their roster going forward. That's what we got from the court in the NBA. Let's switch now into the baseball diamond with the MLB. And starting off, it looked to be huge news early on in the season when Fernando Tatis Jr. went down back against the San Francisco Giants on April 5th. The shortstop fell after a strikeout, didn't look good, was holding his shoulder, his left shoulder. The medical training staff was out there immediately. All of baseball fans around the world were lost for breath because the acclaimed, face of the future of the MLB, Fernando Tatis Jr., if he went down, it looked bad when he went down on April 5th, but instead, he is expected to be activated. He is okay, and he just had a left shoulder inflammation, knocked him out a couple of games, but he is expected to be activated against a huge NL West series against the Los Angeles Dodgers, two teams who are going to be back and forth, the Padres and the Dodgers, in this division, and it's going to tail out between these two, I think, for the entire season. And Fernando Tatis Jr. escaping near big injury, in my opinion, potentially season-ending, but instead, he's all right, left shoulder inflammation, and he will be back in the lineup in the next series for the San Diego Padres. Huge for Fernando Tatis Jr. getting back on the court as well. And continuing on with the news we've seen this past week in the MLB, and this pretty much, again, goes to the entire season. Let's give it up for the New York Mets, who have played a total of 8 games this season and have had 7 already postponed games this season. They've dealt with COVID, they've dealt with weather, and they're dealing with the weather again. The New York Mets flew into Colorado in a near blizzard. Guys getting off the plane saying, are we playing the Green Bay Packers? Are we the Green Bay Packers? What is going on here in the middle of a blizzard? Their game tonight has been postponed due to freezing temperatures and snow. So the New York Mets, it's looking like they might play a total of 50 games this season if this keeps continuing. And not good for a team who looked like they were going to show a lot of promise this year. A strong bullpen, getting in Francisco Lindor on the sticks, a strong offense in the lineup as well. Just can't get on the field and can't get on the diamond with the New York Mets, and that's been holding them back so far this season already. Now with 7 postponements, and they've only played 8 games this season. But again, tonight's game will get made up tomorrow night, set up for a doubleheader against the Colorado Rockies, 2 7-inning games in order to try to make up for the missed game tonight. And big news this week in the MLB and for all baseball fans, Carlos Rodon no-hit the Cleveland Indians on Wednesday. Left-hander for the Chicago White Sox. He hit one batter in the toe away from throwing a perfect game on Wednesday. An 8-0 victory against the Indians. Great for Rendon back on the mound, and a huge outing for him, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, with a no-hitter against the Indians, again, you're one toe away from a perfect game. But nevertheless, this is the second no-hitter we've seen already this season. Joe Musgrove for the San Diego Padres, going back to the dads, also had one earlier in the season. So round of applause for him as well. Carlos Rodon, no-hitter against the Cleveland Indians on Wednesday. Huge news for all baseball fans, and just huge news for the sport already here early in this season. We've seen it all already from the small little sample we've had of the season. 2 no-hitters, near perfect game, snow, blizzards, Shohei Ohtani going lights out in the sticks, lights out pitching, Ronald Acuna Jr. and Freddie Freeman battling out with each other on the same team for the MVP award is what it's looking like right now this season. A lot of great baseball we've already seen so far, and we're just getting started in the MLB. But for those who are big fans of the Slaw Sports Show, you know where my passion lies. So let's go ahead and get to the NFL and get to the gridiron here on today's show. And we'll start off with some headlines and then get into the bulk of what I want to talk about in today's episode. So first and foremost, a little bit of a headline / joke / possible rumor that we saw come out today. Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, Skittles, whatever you want to call him, he called Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers prior to this season, of course, where they went on to win the Super Bowl. And the two sides discussed potentially a reunion, or actually not a reunion to the game for Marshawn Lynch, a return back onto the field. And how remarkable would that have been to see beast mode in the backfield with Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, who, like we said, went on to win a Super Bowl. The two battled it out against each other with Marshawn Lynch on the Seahawks, Brady, of course, with the New England Patriots. What if we saw the two reunite down in Tampa Bay? What if at this point? But those rumors coming out today definitely makes us think, grab a Twizzler and chew on it there, when Marshawn Lynch could have won another ring down in Tampa Bay with the boys that reunited down there. Just the old heads that went down there in Tampa Bay and went on to win a ring. And, looking to be another strong outing for them going into the 2021 season as well. And some more shocking / somber news that came out for the NFL this week. Another retirement in sports. This one was a big one. Wide receiver Julian Edelman announced his retirement from the NFL. Longtime face of the franchise behind Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski with the New England Patriots, but an all-time great in Pat's history. Dealing with a knee injury last year, had surgery, never got back on the field, and all the reports all offseason said that Julian Edelman was probably not going to be playing a full season this year. Failed a physical with the New England Patriots and was officially released by the team. And shortly following his release, officially came out and had his official retirement announcement from the NFL. So a big question and a big topic on everyone's mind this week has been Julian Edelman's career. And is it Hall of Fame worthy? And that's something that we can debate here just for a little bit. Julian Edelman has the numbers. He has the second all-time in receptions for 118 receptions, 1,442 yards in the postseason in his career. That is second all-time behind Jerry Rice. We all know the miraculous plays that Julian Edelman played, or the remarkable and immaculate plays that Julian Edelman had in the postseason, in the playoffs, during the long dynasty run for the New England Patriots. The remarkable catches, of course. The first one that comes to mind is the Atlanta Falcons catch, a big one that, that play alone should be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But I don't think that Julian Edelman is a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Just looking at the guys who haven't gone into the Hall of Fame and the guys that have always been heavily debated year in, year out, have way better numbers in their career. Season-wise, all-time career-wise, just Julian Edelman, I think, doesn't have the numbers in the totality of his career to make the Hall of Fame. No Pro Bowls, no All Pros for Julian Edelman. Just unfortunately, the numbers aren't there to meet the criteria of being a Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrined in Canton. But in my opinion, he will be enshrined in New England. I think that Julian Edelman was an all-time great Pat in New England and will be recognized as such and be inducted into the team's Hall of Fame. I just don't see it as an NFL all-timer being recognized into the Hall of Fame. But Julian Edelman, hate to see him go. The Patriots, they're now at the end of their dynasty. They're all gone at this point. They've still got pieces on defense and up front that have been there for years and been part of the dynasty. But the faces again of this dynasty has been Edelman, Rob Gronkowski, and Tom Brady. I think it's safe to say we finally put a tombstone down on the New England Patriots dynasty that once was. Now, one, of course, could arise from the dead and end up rolling with what they've been building so far this offseason, looking like they'll eventually, looking like the Patriots will somewhat improve from what they did last year. But the all-time great dynasty we've seen, the last 2 decades, it's looking like it might finally be over. And thankfully for all football fans, that's over. But now let's get to the bulk of what I want to talk about today. And that's, again, centered in the NFL and the Williams Hill Sportsbook, who's responsible for putting out year after year the potential win totals for every NFL team. And this is the bulk of where the over-unders come from when it comes to the wins and losses for teams in the season. Again, going to a 17-game season this year, and they released their projected totals for each team this week. And you look at the top totals, no surprise across the board. The Kansas City Chiefs leading the way. They are projected to have 12 wins this season. The way the Kansas City Chiefs play, the way they played the last 3 years, you got to take the over on 12. This is a 13-14 win team, especially in a 17-game season. Kansas City is definitely hitting the 12 mark at least this season. And rounding up behind them is the Super Bowl champs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 11.5 projected wins this season. Green Bay Packers sitting at 11. That's great value with the Green Bay Packers. Just take that how it is. That's kind of where my projections lie as well. Potentially 11 wins with Aaron Rodgers, the reigning MVP, suiting back up again for the Green Bay Packers. Brought back the entire team and no one else. Why not project that they finish exactly the same? Would not surprise me at all from the Green Bay Packers. And now right up behind them, tied at 11 wins, is also the Baltimore Ravens, which I thought was a surprising one at 11 wins with Lamar Jackson. And we'll get into why I think that's surprising and just that division as a whole as we progress throughout the episode. But Baltimore Ravens at 11 wins is an interesting one. I don't know if I can see Lamar Jackson winning potentially 11 games next season. But round up behind them, this is another shocking one. 10.5 projected wins this season for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm high on the Buffalo Bills going on to this season. I think Josh Allen has the potential to be the next MVP in the NFL next year. 10.5 wins is shocking for the Buffalo Bills, saying it where they are in their division and in the AFC as well. And tied with them at 10.5 is also the Los Angeles Rams. Another one I think they hit right on the nail with that one. The Rams, put up a great season last year, made it to the divisional round of the playoffs against the Green Bay Packers, and this year brought in Matthew Stafford as their new quarterback. I'm expected to see improvement in the slightest bit from the LA Rams. So 10.5, also great value and great expectations, and something that I agree with on that one. But that's the top totals. Now let's look at the bottom totals, the lowest total wins projected this season. And we have a tie at 5 as the lowest total. And I mean, last year we had a 1-win team. We had a 2-win team in the Jaguars and the Jets. They project the lowest to be a 5. Tied between the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans. Detroit I can see, Houston I can see, but again, 5. Houston I think might win 2 games at best next season, especially if they move on from Deshaun Watson and get that situation figured out, or if he even doesn't play for them, whether it's being traded, whether it's sitting out the season. No way, no shot, no how do the Houston Texans win 5 games next year. I don't believe it for a minute. Take the under on the lowest projected win total with the Houston Texans. And Detroit, another interesting one. New head coach coming in, new GM as well. I guess no hope for Motor City Dan Campbell in year 1 in Detroit or Jared Goff in year 1 in Detroit. They're thinned out on offense, thinned out on defense. Still a lot of holes to fill in a tough division in the NFC North as Chicago gets things rolling too. So Detroit, I can see at 5 wins. Looking, I would say, more at 4 potentially on the season, but that one's sitting in a good spot. Just Houston Texans, no shot do they win anywhere close to 5 games next year. The only way that'd be possible is if Deshaun Watson somehow suits up as a Houston Texan, but that's looking near to none on the odds of that happening. And then at 6, we have another 2-way tie with the first 2 picks, actually, in the NFL draft, and that's going to be the New York Jets and the Jacksonville Jaguars at 6 wins. Both teams, new head coaches, both teams set to draft new quarterbacks at the first 2 picks in the NFL draft. We all know Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 to Jacksonville to team up with Urban Meyer. Does Jacksonville actually improve and win 5 more games from last season? Last year, they won the first game of the year and lost 15 straight to round out their season. And you're projecting them to win 6? A 5-game improvement with a first-year head coach in the NFL and a first-year quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. High praise for Trevor Lawrence, but he is the number 1 prospect in the NFL draft this year. I don't know if they win close to 6 games, but who knows? It's the NFL. A lot can happen in a weak division, and we've seen rookie quarterbacks impress and do a lot better than expected. Look at Justin Herbert this past year. Trevor Lawrence might be that guy this year. And the Jets as well. Rob Saleh coming in as their head coach in his first season. And right now, the overwhelming majority is saying Zach Wilson will be their quarterback. So does Zach Wilson and Bob Salah team up to win 6 games next year? That's what Williams Hill Sportsbook says. We'll see if that happens as well. And then Cincinnati Bengals is the next on our list for lowest totals, sitting at 6.5 wins projected for Joe Burrow and the Bengals coming into year 2. Burrow, of course, still rehabbing from that ACL tear. Does he come back and be full form? Does he come back and potentially win 6 games for the Cincinnati Bengals? I think that's a low shot for the Bengals. And no hope on Joe Burrow, it seems like. And it's a guy we all know I've never been high on. But 6.5 wins for the Bengals is interesting. It's all, of course, going to depend on what they do. I said their offseason moves during free agency was questionable. It's all going to come down to the draft. But they're going to be in a tough division to rival against with these 3 teams potentially in the AFC North. And let's go ahead and spend the rest of the time in the NFC North because we got some more headlines with the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns added Jadeveon Clowney on a 1-year, $8 million deal, guaranteed $2 million in incentives, puts it at a $10 million deal in total for Jadeveon Clowney. And today we see the repercussions of that early on, with Sheldon Richardson, the defensive tackle, being released, frees up $12 million. So, risk-reward for the Cleveland Browns. They added Jadeveon Clowney to their pass rush along with Takk McKinley. And let's just take a minute and let's look at the offseason and the new-look Cleveland Browns of what they're bringing into their roster. So, we're bringing up a tweet here of at My Sports Update, NFL Update, and seeing what the Browns are potentially going to look like next season. And this is just their defense, mind you. Defensive line and up front the big boys, Myles Garrett, a former number 1 overall pick, Jadeveon Clowney on the opposite side of the edge, a former number 1 overall pick, Tack McKinley, who got brought in this year, had a solid career early on with the Atlanta Falcons, panned out, especially last year, bounced around from team to team. We talked about him in a previous episode. Malik Jackson and Sheldon Richardson here. This is a little bit dated, but Sheldon Richardson has officially been released. But I still think there's some value on the defensive tackle market right now for the Browns to potentially, look forward to going to fill that need in the interior part of their defensive line. Linebacker, still a little bit concerned. Looking at their starters, Anthony Walker, not an ideal guy to have as your linebacker number 1 for the Cleveland Browns, but Sion Takitaki, this guy's a beast, and he's a great linebacker number 2 for this team. Jacob Phillips. But the real difference on the Cleveland Browns is going to be this secondary, because the 2 additions we see here, John Johnson at safety, still the best offseason pickup by far this year by the Cleveland Browns and in the entire league was this deal. And Denzel Ward, the Warden, at corner, another first-round pick as well. Troy Hill, he's coming in at corner as well. Greedy Williams coming back at corner. He was a second-round pick. Rodney Harrison, and then Grant Delpit out of LSU. They drafted him last year in the second round. He missed the entire season, was injured. He's coming back from his injury. We get to see Delpit back on the field for the Cleveland Browns. So the Cleveland Browns defense is looking very scary right now going into next season. And it brings me back to the Williams Hill Sportsbook, because they're projected 10 wins on the year. I think that's great value to be had with the Cleveland Browns, and something that you can play around with and go back and forth with the Cleveland Browns. But the Cleveland Browns, like it or not, they are silently turning into a contender this season. And I've always been torched year after year. Those who have been following the Slaw Sports Show since the very beginning, Baker Mayfield's been my guy. I've always been riding Baker Mayfield. I've always been expecting this come up from the Cleveland Browns. Last year, got into the playoffs, waxed the Pittsburgh Steelers first round, narrowly got close to beating the Kansas City Chiefs after Patrick Mahomes went down. This year, we just talked about what all they're adding on defense. Offensively, keep it the exact same, because it worked last year around Baker Mayfield in the first year with Kevin Stefanski's offense. You get Odell Beckham back for a full season. The Cleveland Browns, in my opinion, when the odds come out, I think Cleveland will open the season as the Vegas favorites to win the AFC North. And I think Pittsburgh is not going to do it. The only competition will be the Baltimore Ravens. But I think when the odds come out that the Cleveland Browns will be the favorites to win the division, and it's all going to have to play out in the season. But again, this Browns team, it's been a process, but it's been a process that's working out. And from what they've done in the draft, they built through the draft, started now building through free agency as well, landing huge pieces here and there when they have needed it. The entire roster is just stacked. 10 first-round picks, 3 former number 1 overall picks. We talked about Clowney and Myles Garrett. Baker Mayfield as well as a number 1 overall pick. Browns fans, I'm happy for you. You've dealt with the worst of the worst in professional sports, especially in America. And right now you're sitting on the cornerstone, the turning point into being one of the top teams in the NFL. So now you look towards April 29th for the Cleveland Browns. And I always said their number 1 position of concern was defensive end. They needed to find a defensive end that could complement Myles Garrett in their pass rush. They might have found that here in Jadeveon Clowney. That's yet to be determined what kind of performance he's going to have. He's been a little bit shaky last year especially. Shaky a little bit, started off with the Seahawks and then never recorded a sack with the Titans, but was great in run defense and great in pressure. But again, just not getting a single sack registered for the Tennessee Titans. So I thought the deal was a little bit overpriced for Jadeveon Clowney, but it could prove to be a steal if he comes back to true form, again, alongside Myles Garrett, not facing a single double team at all. A lot of the attention will be faced to number 95 on the other side of the defensive line. So Clowney could offer some upgrade to their pass rush. So now you look to the draft, and I think offensively you're still set. Right now, you got a great young line put together around Baker Mayfield. The pieces are there offensively. So you keep looking at defense. And I can bring the graphic back up again. Linebacker is the major concern as of right now for the Cleveland Browns. I said there's still great value to be had at defensive tackle, so I don't think they would address that first round. You got to get a linebacker, Cleveland. You got to land a guy. I don't think Micah Parsons, I don't think he's going to be available to you in the first round. So instead, you're going to have to look for a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame, Zaven Collins out of Tulsa, or even Nick Bolton as well out of Missouri. All three guys, if one of those three are available, you have to pull the trigger on one of those guys because those are your impact difference makers, sideline to sideline ability. That's the missing key to this Browns team right now, is a coverage linebacker in that second level that can perform, that can show out and disrupt in the passing game and in the run game as well. And again, JOK out of Notre Dame is the best pick, I think, that the Cleveland Browns can select. If he's there, A-plus grade already through the first round for the Cleveland Browns. Another direction they could look could be safety, but again, Grant Delpit coming back, a second-round pick from last year, and John Johnson coming in from the LA Rams this year. But if Trayvon Morrig's there and the top linebackers are gone, you take the safety out of TCU. The guy was the best defensive back in college football last year. You could just improve what strength you're building in that second level and in the secondary. And again, you're worried right there with how many the lack of depth, they have at linebacker. So the Cleveland Browns, big decision on their hand. Of course, they could even go defensive tackle. Christian Barmore is far and away the first defensive tackle that will be taken off the board in the NFL draft this year. Christian Barmore is explosive and can add even more explosiveness to that defensive line if he's there. But again, he's far and away the best defensive tackle. Hard to see him falling into the 20s. But a big guy out of Alabama is another one that they could potentially add here in the first round to fill a need as well. So now I want to switch to another team, and that's going to be the Atlanta Falcons that I want to focus on for the remainder part of today's episode. Again, another team, new head coach, and Arthur Smith coming over, the offensive coordinator from the Tennessee Titans, and a new GM as well for the Falcons. But from what we've heard, it's going to be a joint operation in Atlanta and how they're going to work the draft. Both sides will have inputs, which is going to be interesting. Atlanta Falcons currently right now sitting at the number 4 overall pick, and they're in an interesting spot. I said it once, I'll say it again. The NFL draft is starting at 4. Trevor Lawrence is going 1, Zach Wilson going 2, 49ers taking one of the 3 quarterbacks at 3. So the draft really starts at number 4. And the Atlanta Falcons, they can take a quarterback of their own. I'm heavily against it. I will be, and I will continue to be, heavily against the Falcons taking a quarterback at number 4. But what they could take is a generational talent, one of the best scouting tight ends I have ever seen, the entire scouting department of the NFL has ever seen. Anywhere you look, Kyle Pitts is a phenom in the NFL draft, and in my opinion, the second best prospect in the entire draft. If he's there at 4, I think the Atlanta Falcons have to take him. But the other option they have to consider is going to be a trade back. Teams like the Chicago Bears, Washington Football Team, and the New England Patriots are quarterback needy. And if they can put an offer together, but it's got to be an offer. Teams that are sitting at the bottom 15 picks in the draft, it's got to be a great offer to move all the way up to 4. San Francisco moved up from 12 to 3 and had to give up 2 first-round picks to do so. So you need a huge offer from the Patriots, Bears, or football team to trade back from number 4. But the Atlanta Falcons, I think they stay. I said it in my last mock draft 2.0. I think they're going to stay and take Kyle Pitts at number 2. And, everyone's always asked me, well, what about Hayden Hurst, the guy they traded for last year from the Baltimore Ravens? He had a great season for them at tight end. Why would they go tight end again? Well, let me bring back up the fact that they have Arthur Smith now as their head coach going into the season. Arthur Smith last season ran more multi-tight end sets in the NFL than any head coach in the rest of the league. Why not add a guy like Kyle Pitts? And, you also think about they had a potential to have 3 800-yard plus wide receivers in Russell Gage, Curtis Samuel, and of course, the great Julio Jones last year. But Julio Jones, we've seen it the last couple of years, he's just not physically capable of playing every single game, every single snap. So now you give the creativity to Arthur Smith to draw things up on offense, draw up different packages and different formations. And if you add Kyle Pitts into that mix-up, you got a great recipe for dominance. And I mean dominance on that offense. And that's why I'm against a quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan's still playing very good football and is putting up great numbers compared to the rest of the league. And the way his numbers are set up right now, you're not moving on from him for 2 years if you wanted to. So why not build around him now and keep things going? The only concern, of course, is the defense. It's the Atlanta Falcons. They are notoriously known for having a terrible defense and probably will again this season if they go with Kyle Pitts. But you go with the idea of, we'll just outscore you. And that's what it's looking like the Atlanta Falcons are going to do if they select Kyle Pitts on the 29th. But again, just being able to have multiple personnel that they can work into their offense with a creative mind like Arthur Smith is going to be key. There can be sets you have Kyle Pitts in, Julio Jones, and Calvin Ridley at the same time. You can put Hayden Hurst back in, take Julio Jones out just as easily, work things in, and mix things in and out. They also have added 2 players that could be potential starters this week. First one, Cordell Patterson signed a 1-year, $3 million deal. They have listed him as a running back, which he played a fair number of stats at running back last season for the Chicago Bears, but one of the all-time great kick returners is now joining the Atlanta Falcons, who have some great history at kick returner as well with Devin Hester back in the day. So now adding Cordell Patterson to their offense, another guy that Arthur Smith can play around with in his system, and Deron Harmon coming in at safety as well. That's filling in with a big need that they lost in Ricardo Allen in their secondary. But just that defense of the Atlanta Falcons is going to be critical and is going to make or break that team. And we talked about the AFC North. I also want to talk about the NFC South while we're on the Falcons, because interesting division. NFC South, we talked about last year leading up to the season of how they could potentially rival the NFC West the NFC South and then the NFC West as the top divisions I thought would be in the NFL last season until, of course, the 49ers fell off and the Arizona Cardinals fell off at the end of the year, and just Atlanta and Carolina just never got the ball rolling last season. But this year, it's going to be interesting to see what we see out of the NFC South. We got the Super Bowl champs in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they brought back the entire cast, ready to run it back with Tom Brady for possibly another Super Bowl run. And the Carolina Panthers, of course, we talked about them a lot last week when they added Sam Darnold. Talked about all the moves they now have available to them at number 8 in the draft. And the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints are the interesting one. Drew Brees obviously retiring is going to be huge for the current NFC South champions. And how's this offseason going to unravel for the New Orleans Saints? A team that lost a lot and has been one of the biggest losers of free agency, due in part to their huge cap number they had. They had to cut a lot of players to get down, didn't really add anything to their team. But they do get back Michael Thomas, who hopefully will be fully healthy for a full season. Still probably wouldn't draft him in fantasy after what he did to me this year. But at quarterback is the interesting thing. It's going to be a true battle, in my opinion, between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, all training camp long, to see what's going to happen there. What's going to happen between Jameis, what's going to happen, of course, between him and Taysom Hill, and see what they can make of it. And I have high hopes for Jameis Winston, in my opinion, with that team going forward. But just stepping back and looking at the NFL as a whole, less than 2 weeks away until draft night. And we, of course, I talked about it last week. We will be covering it live, the full 4 hours here on the Slaw Sports Show, the entire first round analysis with me and Matt Laguza and our commissioner Grayos, keeping us informed with the picks as they're happening live on the dot. So if you want to check out the NFL draft first round, you have a different avenue of coverage to look forward to, and that's going to be on the Slaw Sports Show as well. I'm excited. It's a different thing we're trying out here, but the way the stream's gone so far through YouTube, I think we can make it work and go for a full 4 hours. So I'm excited about the draft, and countless hours have been put into this year's class, and it's a great one, and I'm excited to see how it pans out come April 29th as well. So I believe that pretty much wraps it up for what I wanted to talk about here. I'm just looking forward to the draft as of right now. We're trying to keep things rolling. But again, let's get back to our UFC Fight Night Pick'em of the week. We are going to be taking Robert the Reaper Whittaker by decision tomorrow night against Kelvin Gastelum in that fight. 5-4 record. Can we win 2 straight? Can we do it, boys? Can we get back and keep things rolling in the right direction for our Pick'em of the weeks? Let's hope so. But for today's episode, that's pretty much all we have on deck. Pretty much hit all of the big headlines and keep things rolling. The NBA season keeps rolling along. Big players coming back up into the starting lineups in the NBA. The MLB has been great so far this season, and long road ahead as the season plays along. And, of course, the NFL draft. So hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode of the Slaw Sports Show. And again, we'll keep things rolling. Come back next week with another great one as well. Fridays from 10 to 11 live on YouTube at Slaw Sports Show and on WSOE 89.3 on the radio. Today's episode, if you missed out on any part of it, will be posted on our podcast at Slaw Sports Show as well. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm. Anywhere you get a podcast, you will find the Slaw Sports Show. So again, thank you all for listening. That's all the time we have. So until next time, peace.